Hello, everybody, and welcome to lecture number 3. That is right, we are in week 3 of class, and I've got the schedule right here. We are covering from the 25th to the 29th basic cover letters, and you're watching lecture number 3 right now, and we're reading chapter 2 from the Kagan book. Nothing due as far as major assignments at the end of this week, but remember, at the end of next week, we're turning in both the final draft of the resume and the cover letter. So, I want to talk to you about cover letters to give you an example of one that I received from somebody, but that has some weaknesses that I want to explain to you. It is laid out in the proper way. You'll see they've got the address of the recipient, they've got their own address, to whom it may concern. They start off with a quote, begin explaining that quote, how is that quote relevant to them, talking about how they connect that relevance to the job itself, and then further paragraph explaining the job. They sign off, sincerely, Joe Snuffy. There's your name. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this because there are some weaknesses here. Even if the overall formatting looks good, which it sort of does. So to start out, the cover letter should be no more than 1 page. Your cover letter should not be longer than your resume. If your resume is 2 pages, you can go ahead and make your cover letter 2 pages, but they should match each other. So you do start out with the address of the recipient and your own address. Generally, you'll include the names, however. So make sure you include your name on that one and the name to whom you're sending it, or the name of the company. With to whom it may concern, generally you want to try and find the name of the person who will be receiving your cover letter, whether that's the hiring manager or whoever's chairing the search committee. Trying to get that name will automatically give you a bit of a personal foot in the door. Next, this quote. Now, you'll see this sort of as an opening move a lot of times. It sort of seems cheesy to me. But it is something that a lot of people do as an entrance ramp to their letters. So if you choose to use this, I wouldn't put this tilde in here. Rather, I would weave this quote into the sentence, something along the lines of Anthony Robbins once said, "If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten." Being innovative involves working smarter from a new paradigm, so new paradigm. That's another thing that you should talk about in your cover letter. That's sort of jargony, but it doesn't really mean anything. So as you're writing your cover letters, make sure you're not including jargon that doesn't really mean anything. Paradigm isn't really something that that a lot of people use in technical jargon. So try to avoid language like that sounds cheesy. That might possibly not really help out your chances. Many times people in everyday lives go through life, so this is really repetitive. Many times people in everyday lives go through life. It's just a really horribly repetitive thing, and it does that old thing that a lot of student papers do in the world today, or in today's world, or in baseball these days. Don't start anything like that. You can come up with some other way to start a sentence than that. Even if you just said many times people go through life on autopilot, reacting to their environment according to their internal programming, as Mr. Robbins likes to refer to it. That's not me. Even that is 100% better than saying, in today's world, or in today's society, that are sort of these tired old phrases that you hear in everybody's papers, and they sound bad. Next, moving on to this person is connecting that quote to themselves. For a decade or longer, I've been concerned with why I do what I do and how can I change to get what I want. So avoiding this parallel sentence structure. Well, you don't want to avoid the parallel sentence structure. So it makes it hard to read, even though it's a little stylistic here. So for a decade or longer, I've been concerned with why I do what I do and how I can change rather than how can I change. I can change to get what I want. That at least gives parallel sentence structure to that sentence. Over the last 5 years, I've gone through dramatic changes in life, from religious internships in various parts of the U.S. to transferring to 3 different schools with 5 different majors. Now, to me, saying that you've gone to 3 different schools and had 5 different majors and been through a lot of changes in life, to me as an employer, that would make me feel like you were unsettled. And I would want to know, why are you settling on me? Why now? You know? Uh, in your cover letter, you have to pitch the sorts of things that make the employer say, I have to have this candidate. I can't choose one of the other candidates because this candidate has everything I want and then some, right? So when you're adding in things like, oh, well, this is my life change, this is good for me, this is good for what I'm doing, they don't care. They want to know. They want to do what's good for them, right? What's good for the company, and what's good for the company isn't always what's good for you. So rather than saying this is a great and wonderful opportunity in my life, say this is a great and wonderful opportunity for the company to benefit from my unique skills, or I feel like I can offer the team this skill or that skill that is something that the company really needs, and back that up with research that you've done about the company. Say, I see that you, ZeniMax, have started work on a new video game, and Starfield is the next Bethesda game that you're working on, and I see that that has to do with sci-fi in space. So I want to use my fantasy sci-fi expertise to help you to craft this specific thing within the world, and my sci-fi expertise has to do with telling stories. And you can go on and on about the ways in which your expertise that's laid out in your resume can be plugged into the things that the company needs. And if you do that effectively in your cover letter, you'll have very attractive paperwork, especially if it matches up with the resume. So moving on, don't do that. I know the feeling of being stuck. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've recently started developing my own personal growth project that I plan to use in workshops in the future. Okay, that's fine, but I don't need to hear about it necessarily. This job requires someone who is not going to allow the environment and other people to control their focus. Okay, maybe you do understand the position, maybe. From day one, you can count on me to find out what works and what doesn't for the company and demand more from myself than anyone else would expect. Sounds kind of plain. There's no specific detail about the company, and that makes me feel like they didn't really do any research. It's not a letter that would make me say, "Oh, I must have this employee. I must have them." It just doesn't. I'm not. I'm not convinced by it. So this letter is on Blackboard for you to look at as an example of something not to do. Well, you're like, Sensei Albright, well, what do I do? Can you give me an example of that? To that I would say that letter is a good example of the format you should take. But a much better example of the content you can find on my YouTube playlists. There is a playlist entitled, if my computer will be fast enough. Here we go. Go to YouTube. And we're going to YouTube. this here somewhere. Aha, created playlists, cover letters. You'll see this list of about 11 cover letters. And I would like you to look through these cover letters and figure out which ones you think have effectively done the things that a cover letter should do, and that is align with your resume and tell the story that your resume doesn't necessarily tell, right? So in your resume you lay out the facts of your work experience, right? But in the cover letter you should tell the story that connects all those things. Yeah, and there are gimmicky ways to do that, right? Quotes and looks like Scrabble tiles in that first video. But there are also ways that are generally really creative. And so I want you to find the way that yours looks good, and then do your best to emulate that. At the end of this week, I would like to see, as one of your daily assignments, a drafty draft of your cover letter. I would also like to see a response to Chapter 2, just as the same as you've been doing. And then I would also like to see a response to the cover letter list. So look through that playlist, respond to one or more of the videos. You don't have to respond to the lecture video this week, but do look at the cover letter video list. And that should give you some ideas about the things that you should include in cover letters. Some of those are very good, others are not as good, and I think that you can decide which ones those are for yourself. Alright, so that covers us for this week. Again, I would like a response to the chapter, drafty draft of your cover letter, and a response to the playlist that you can find on my A-Grade Agent channel. I'll also link it in Blackboard. All right, have a good week.